We have 4-2 Auburn taking on 17th ranked Arkansas. This game's going to be played 12 p.m. Eastern time on CBS. Arkansas enters this game as a 3.5-point favorite. And this is the first home game that Arkansas has had in the last 3 weeks. You know, they were on the road their last couple of matchups. Now they return home. It looks like this game is going to be sold out according to what I've heard from Razorback fans so far when it comes to ticket sales. So this is going to be a loud, noisy game if you're an Auburn fan. And for Arkansas, they're looking to avoid losing 3 straight. We knew that the month of October was going to be a tough stretch for this team, okay? You look at the fact that you had to play Ole Miss last week. Then before that, you had to play Georgia. You had to play Texas A&M. So you've had to play some really tough teams. And you have another tough team in Auburn. Now, for Arkansas, you lost that game to Ole Miss. Pretty much, you had Sam Pittman, who wanted to win the game instead of playing for overtime. I am a big fan of the move. Okay, I felt like it was the right decision. However, I felt like the play calling could have been, you know, a little bit better in that situation. When you had over 300 rushing yards against the Ole Miss defense that couldn't stop you to save your life, I probably would have tried to run the football instead of trying to do a rollout with my quarterback at that side of the field. But, you know, I'm not the guy calling the plays. You know, I get paid to talk about this. I don't get paid to, you know, call the plays. But, you know, everybody had, you know, their fair share of criticism for Sam Pittman during that game, but I felt like he made the right move going for it. And I feel like most of Razorback Nation and Arkansas fans agree with the decision to try to win the game instead of playing for overtime. A lot of people just didn't really like the play calling. And when we look at the defense, okay, the run defense for Arkansas hasn't been good their last 2 matchups. Last week against Ole Miss, they allowed 324 rushing yards. They allowed 273 rushing yards against Georgia. And I think a big reason for this is because of the scheme and the way that the 3-3-5 defense is set up. You got 3 down linemen and you got 3 linebackers, which means that you're going to have to make sure that your linebackers are able to cover the edges. And I don't really think that Arkansas's linebackers are all that fast enough or athletic enough to be able to cover their edges, because that looks like to be the weakness of that Arkansas run defense. It's not like they're getting beat consistently when they run the football up against them through the gut. It looks like Arkansas's defense gets beat when they have to cover their edge and when teams are running outside of the tackles. And when you look at Auburn, you have a really great group of running backs in Tank Bigsby and Hunter. So Arkansas, I mean, you're going to have your work cut out for them, because Tank Bigsby is one of the best running backs in all of college football, and he didn't really have a great game last week against Georgia. So this Arkansas run defense has struggled over the last couple of weeks. So if you're an Auburn fan, you definitely feel confident in your ability to establish the run game. However, Auburn has Bo Nix at quarterback, and Bo Nix, I don't really feel like he played that bad last week against Georgia. Okay, now I know he did miss some wide open wide receivers and things like that, but overall, I don't really feel like Bo Nix did all that bad last week against Georgia. At the same time, it's so easy to point the blame at Bo Nix. However, Auburn's wide receivers lead the SEC in drops. So the wide receivers for Auburn haven't really been all that consistent. And although you look at a Razorback defense that got shredded by an Ole Miss offense that's one of the best in the nation last week, I don't really expect Auburn's passing attack to just catch fire against Arkansas secondary. So when you look at Bo Nix, he's probably going to have another great performance. He needs to have the performance that he had a couple of weeks ago when Auburn defeated LSU. Like, I feel like that is the best game that I ever saw Bo Nix play in against LSU. He was extending plays. He was making things happen with his legs. He was kind of looking like Johnny Manziel 2.0 out there. So that's where Auburn is going to win this game at. They're going to have to make sure that Bo Nix is able to utilize his legs, and they're probably going to need to run Bo Nix a lot. You know, try to get some design quarterback runs going, because what Auburn likes to do is they like to use that run game to open up the passing game. You know, get some play action shots downfield, downfield, try to get the RPO game going, try to get some read option going. Like, you got to get Bo Nix's legs involved in this game, because I feel like that's where Bo Nix is at his best, when he's able to use his legs, when he's trying to extend plays and things like that. And if you're Arkansas, you're probably going to try to keep him contained in the pocket. Now, if you're an Auburn fan, I feel pretty confident in a lot of confidence in Bo Nix going into this game, believe it or not, which is something that I never have had in Bo Nix. But, you know, I feel pretty high on Bo Nix going into this game, because you look at what Matt Corral did to his Arkansas defense last week. Even though Matt Corral isn't Bo Nix, he's way better than Bo Nix. You also got to look at the fact that Bo Nix is extremely athletic and he's really good with his legs. So I really feel like that could be something to look out for if you are an Auburn fan. You want to try to get Bo Nix going on the ground, which also is going to help out that rushing attack, because then Arkansas is going to have to try to find more ways to stop that ground game. Also, Arkansas could be in for another big performance offensively. We saw what KJ Jefferson did last week. I mean, the dude was on fire, and he's having a really good season so far. He's thrown for 1,235 pass yards, 9 touchdowns to 3 picks, completing 62.7% of his passes. He also has 5 touchdowns on the ground and 320 rushing yards on the year. And I feel like him and this Arkansas offense could be in for another big game, because this Auburn defense has kind of, you know, faltered down the stretch. Their last couple of games, I really feel like their defense hasn't played as good as what they did the start of the year. You know, see if you can get that pass rush going if you're Auburn. Hopefully your secondary can improve. But for the most part, you know, Auburn's defense hasn't really played all that well over the last couple of weeks. So I think that Arkansas could explode offensively for another week in this game. Now, for the wide receivers of Auburn, you have to be a lot better. Too many drop passes, a lot of inconsistency. You know, I don't really like the route running. And Arkansas fired their wide receiver coach not too long ago, like during the season. And if Arkansas is going to be challenged in this game, I really feel like Auburn is going to have to make sure that they're able to throw the football, because I don't think that you're going to be able to beat Arkansas just strictly being one-dimensional. Okay, one thing about Ole Miss was the fact that they were able to throw the football as well as run the football. Now, outside of Georgia, because Georgia's just a physically dominant team, there hasn't really been a team that's been able to just be one-dimensional against Arkansas. Like, you're going to have to be a balanced football team. You just can't run the football all game and not ask Bo Nix to have to beat you through the air and expect to win this game if you're Auburn. So if you're Auburn, you're going to have a good performance all around on offense. And one thing that Brian Harsin said in his press conference is that the offense has to finish drives. Auburn isn't doing their defense any favors because they're just too consistent offensively. So they have to be able to finish drives, get inside the red zone, try to score points. And I think the red zone is going to be a big determining factor in finding out who's going to be the winner or loser of this game, because both of these two defenses aren't really good in the red zone. As a matter of fact, Auburn has one of the worst red zone defenses in all of college football, and Arkansas isn't that too far away. We saw it Ole Miss was able to do when they were able to get inside the red zone. So I think it's really important, okay? So for me personally, you look at how these two teams stack up front. I think that Auburn's defensive line is pretty good. So I definitely think that Arkansas's offensive line is going to get challenged. And I've said this all year. I feel like Arkansas has one of the best offensive lines in college football. The question is Auburn going to be able to challenge them? I definitely feel like they can. Okay, so up front, I think that Arkansas has the slight advantage up front when it comes to their offensive line versus Auburn's defensive line. But the question is, can Auburn get consistent pressure on KJ Jefferson? On top of that, same problem that Arkansas is going to have with Bo Nix, you're going to have with KJ Jefferson, because KJ Jefferson is a true dual threat quarterback. He can beat you through the air and he can beat you with his legs as well. So, I mean, what is going to be the philosophy if you're the defensive coordinator for Arkansas? Like, how are you going to try to stop it? On top of that, you have to game plan for a whole slew of running backs. Like, these guys have the Avengers of running backs when it comes to college football. Literally, like, anybody can get going. So for Auburn, I'm going to take Arkansas to win. I just feel like Auburn right now offensively, I don't really trust them. Okay, I don't really trust their wide receivers' ability to consistently be able to get open. I don't really trust them to be able to sustain drives. And I eventually feel like Arkansas is going to pull away in this game. Even though I don't expect this game to be a blowout, a lot of people expect this game to be pretty close and tightly contested. And I understand why, but at the same time, I feel like Arkansas is going to win this game by at least 2 touchdowns. So I'm going to take Arkansas to win. 31-17 is going to be my final score prediction in this game. I don't really feel like this is going to be a blowout. I feel like Auburn is going to hang around, but at the same time, I do feel like Arkansas is going to have a pretty solid and emphatic victory against Auburn. So I'm going to take Arkansas to win this game.